Hello, friends, and welcome to Fulton County Public Library's Read Across America in honor of Dr. Geisel Seuss. My name is Miss Janice, and I'm the Youth Services Librarian at the Central Library headquarters. And today, I'd like to share with you one of my favorite classics. Did I ever tell you how lucky you are? By Dr. Seuss. When I was quite young and quite small for my size, I met an old man in the desert of drives, and he sang me a song I will never forget. At least, well, I haven't forgotten it yet. He sat in a terribly prickly place, but he sang with a sunny, sweet smile on his face. When you think things are bad, when you feel sour and blue, when you start to get mad, you should do what I do. Just tell yourself, Ducky, you're really quite lucky. Some people are much more, oh, ever so much more, so much more unlucky than you. Be glad you don't work on the Bungle Bung Bridge that they are building across Boober Bay at Bum Ridge. It's a troublesome world. All the people who are in it are touched with troubles almost every minute. You ought to be thankful a whole heaping lot for the places and people you're lucky you're not. Now just suppose, for example, you lived in Gazette and got caught in that traffic on Zate Highway 8. Or suppose, just for instance, you lived in Gazare with your bedroom up here and your bathroom up there. Suppose, just suppose, you were poor Herbie Hart, who has taken his stumbulator apart. He never will get it together, I'm sure. He never will know if the gick or the goor fits into the shrucks or the snucks or the store. Yes, Ducky, you're lucky you're not Herbie Hart, who has taken his stumbulator apart. Think that work you do is too hard? Think of poor Ollie Sard. He has to mow grass in his uncle's backyard. And it's quick growing grass, and it grows as he mows it. The faster he mows it, the faster he grows it. And all that his stingy old uncle will pay for his shoving that mower around in that hay, it's the piffulous pay of $2 a day. And Ollie can't live on such piffulous pay. So he has to paint flagpoles on Sundays and grooves. How lucky you are you don't live in his shoes. And poor Mr. Bix, every morning at 6. Poor Mr. Bix has to borfin to fix. He doesn't seem fair, it just doesn't seem right. But his borfin just seems to go slump every night. It slumps in a heap, sadly needing repair. Bix figures it's due to the local night air. It takes him all day to unslump it, and then the night air comes back and it slumps once again. So don't you feel blue. Don't get down in the dumps. You're lucky you don't have a boyfriend that schlumps. And while we're at it, consider schlumps. That crumpy, old, horned, web-footed, green-bearded schlumps, whose tail is entailed with unsolvable knots. If he isn't muchly more worse off than you, I'll eat my hat. That's just what I'll do. And you're lucky indeed you don't ride on a camel. To ride on a camel, you sit on a whammel. A whammel? You know, it's sort of a saddle held on by a button that's known as a faddle. And boy, if your old whammel fabble gets loose, I'm telling you, ducky, you're gone like a goose. And poor Mr. Potter, T-crosser, I-dotter, he has to cross T's and he has to dot I's in an old I&T factory out in Van Nuys. Oh, the jobs people work at out west near Howatch. There's a Howatcher bee watcher. His job is to watch, is to keep both eyes on the lazy town bee. A bee that is watched will work harder, you see. Well, he watched and he watched, but in spite of his watch, that bee didn't work any harder, not much. So then somebody said, our old bee watching man just isn't bee watching as hard as he can. He ought to be watched by another Howatcher. The thing that we need is a bee watcher. Well, the bee watcher watched a bee watcher. He didn't watch well, so another bee watcher had to come in as watcher. And today, all the Howatchers who lived in Howatch are watching on watcher watchings. Watching the watcher who watching that bee. You're not a Howatch watcher. You're lucky, you see. And how fortunate you're not Professor DeBreeze, who has spent the past 32 years, if you please, trying to teach Irish ducks how to read Javanese. And think of the poor puffing flugelhorn players who have to parade down the flugelhorn stairs every morning to wake up the Prince of Puboken. It's awful how often their pugels get broken. And oh, just suppose you were poor Harry Haddle. Try as he will, he can't make any shadow. He thinks that perhaps something's wrong with his grits. And I think that, by golly, there probably is. And the brothers Bazoo, the poor brothers Bazoo, suppose your hair grew like theirs happened to do. You think you're unlucky? I'm telling you, ducky, some people are muchly, oh, ever so muchly more unlucky than you. And suppose that you lived in that forest in France where the average young person just hasn't a chance to escape from the perilous pants-eating plants. But your pants are safe. You're a fortunate guy. And you ought to be shouting, "How lucky am I?" And speaking of plants, you should be greatly gladdish. You're not Farmer Falkenberg's 17th radish. And you're so lucky you're not Gucky Gown, who lived by himself 90 miles out of town in the ruins of Runk. Runk is rather run down. And you're so lucky you're not a left sock left behind by mistake in the caverns of Croc. Thank goodness for all the things you're not. Thank goodness you're not something someone forgot and left alone in some punkerish place like a rusty tin coat hanger hanging in space. That's why I say, Ducky, don't grumble, don't stew. Some critters are much, oh, ever so much more unlucky than you. Thank you, friends, for sharing this book with me. Did I ever tell you how lucky you are? By Dr. Seuss. Thank you.